All right, so thank you for joining, everyone. This is the Network and Security team, where we're going to be having a guest speaker today. I am Marcos Orozco, the president of the Network and Security team. I'm joined by Noid Amin, who is our co-president, Ignacio Gramacho, who is the ICC representative, and another member from our team is Timothy Hanman, who is the former president. And then we have Cody Todd, who will be our guest speaker for the day.
All right, I do have a few slides prepared. I've got host disabled.
Let me go ahead and fix that.
Okay.
All right, you should have share access now.
All right, yeah, looks good. All right. So I'll just go straight into it. My timeline here kind of explains my background more. So I graduated from high school in 2015, the spring, and then I started at my local community college, which was Sierra College, and in the fall of 2015. And then in 2018, I started working at the Roseville High School Tech Department. And then 2019, I graduated from Sierra College. I left with 3 degrees and 3 certificates. And then I started at CSUMB that fall. And then after that, I went there for 2 years and graduated there last spring. Ended up with the computer science degree with a concentration in network and security. And then I started working for the Placer County Probation Department here in October of 2021. And then so after CSUMB, I had the drive-through graduation because it was 2021. Here's a picture. We took my dog Tiberius with us, which was pretty cool. And then I did move just kind of straight back in with my parents. And I do want to say it's like, honestly, after CSUMB, I was pretty lazy with applications. Like I just kind of went the easy route with just kind of what LinkedIn, where you just sign in and just throw your application out to whoever. And it didn't really get me very much, I think. And I did apply to some bigger companies like AWS and like HP. But I'm in like the Roseville area and there's not much of that here. I think there's an HP, but even so they weren't hiring, and I did local government, which is like how I ended up with this position that I'm in. And so like what I noticed with job hunting was basically the way I see it is there's experience, education, and certifications. And then the places you apply to kind of need to fit that criteria that you have. So what I kind of see is that like if you just have a lot of education, you want to go to a place that is going to want a lot of education. If you don't have any experience, you have a fresh mind coming into it. And then I also do recommend to like dedicate time to applying each week or like refining what you have. Also avoid getting burnt out because it like is a lot. It takes a lot to get to these, to put yourself out there with this and everything. And also understand that everything takes time. Like I think in the next slide, I explain how the process went to getting this position. And it's like, it's a few months of just waiting, and also avoid getting too attached to a position because it's like that ties in with like getting burnt out. You don't want to be too focused on one position and not end up getting it and just, get upset with that. It happens, but it's like, but yeah. And so, yeah, so like I mentioned, the job with probation started in July. I applied for an IT specialist position with the DA. And then basically the applications just go into a pool for the other departments if they're looking to hire that position. And probation was. And then September, that's when I first got contacted to do an interview, and that was through Microsoft Teams. And then I continue with the next steps. And then they did have a background check that was more thorough, especially being probation. We have more sensitive data, but I needed to include 5 to 7 references, and that's not including the immediate family members. And I think I had a couple people from the club be part of my references. And I didn't want to mention it wasn't like a security clearance background, but it was like very thorough. And then by the time October hit, the background check had cleared and I started the position. I think it was like early October, but that is over the span of a few months, kind of just no information or anything like that. So it takes time. And my takeaways from probation, like first off, like I had no knowledge of probation previously. None of my family's in law enforcement or anything like that. So it was an entirely different world to me. There's a very steep learning curve with that, basically, because I needed to learn what the probation is and does, as well as how I can support the officers, make sure everything's working for them, and like optimize whatever I can. And then at the same time, probation is really like a different side of law enforcement that I've found. It generally like they are looking to support the people who have made these offenses and they provide the help, you know, they're looking to stop it now before it gets any worse, especially. And then some general kind of tips and advice, like it feels ironic to say, but like in any workshop, it's like you want to pick and choose what advice you take because no one's going to be 100% right. You need to fit it to how you are. Especially, and one thing I do want to mention is to get comfortable sending emails because they're often like how your first line of contact with these people, and you want to make sure you're professional but still not just a robot almost, if that makes sense. And with interviews, like as everyone says, it's like you're interviewing them as much as they are to you, and it's just that's kind of what it helps to look for, make sure you would, from your point of view, would you fit in well with this company kind of thing. And also be yourself. Like I said, with fitting it to your personality, it's more important to show who you are than to get the position. Like you want to make sure that you personally would be a good fit for it rather than just I need this position, unless that's what you need, but it depends. And then I did want to actually mention some of the projects I've gone on, especially with the emails, because the radio encryption, basically the radios were not set up with the configured with the Roseville encryption channel. And so they put me in charge of organizing the time for the radios. We needed to talk to the radio shop. They had all the technology and the keys and everything like that to associate these radios with the encryption channels. And so I would be emailing both the radio shop and the locations to make sure we'd have time, especially because it would take like 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes per handheld radio, or 30 to 45 minutes per vehicle radio, especially if it's like it was behind on firmware, we need to upgrade that. And then it was all this extra stuff with that. And then my next project was for digital signage. The chief had seen somewhere else that they were displaying metrics of the department. I don't remember which department was, but he wanted to do something like that at our locations. And so I had to look into finding a service and then quoting how much it would cost and like how we would set it up in the area. And then I ended up deciding on the Yodex service, where it uses these Raspberry Pis, and then you could just mount them to the back of the TVs, and then you remote them in. You can just remote and display certain things for different areas, and keep it all like controlled from one location. So I don't need to like go and train a ton of people. It could just be like one or two people who are in charge of everything. And then this one is actually pretty interesting. This is the probation outreach vehicle, where it's basically taken to, especially like homeless camps and everything like that, where they don't have access to the computers or digital services or anything like that, where we have two computers set up inside of the van, one with a webcam and microphone. And so we can actually zoom into a courtroom and do any court proceedings that they need to do with that, as well as, and then like just any other kind of check-ins that the officers have to do with the people on probation. And this is actually the network diagram of it. I did block out a little bit because that looked like it was something important. And this is rough. This was, I think we're using it roughly, but not these exact IPs. But basically we've got these two computers on this kiosk VLAN. That's this one here. We're using a 27-bit subnet. So there's only 31 hosts, right? 31, 32. And actually one thing, yesterday, we showed the van to the court's CEO and just judges and everything like that. And then they also had a newscaster come out and interview the chief and the CEO of the courts as well, about this and take some video. So, but it turned out that this computer was plugged into, I think it was like one of these ports where this is hooked up on one of the other VLANs at first. So this one just wasn't getting internet. And then once I plugged it in, it turned out that it was going really slow, like under a megabit a second kind of speeds. And I think in the area, what it came out to be with the area we had was Verizon, we lost signal and it just caused a lot of interference. But then once we went to the other side of the parking lot, it worked fine. So that was helpful that it worked out, but it was kind of stressful. And then we do have our CGIS is our network for the probation. And basically we have one computer, we will have one computer just hooked onto the network that way so that we can use it with the printers. The printer that we have in there when they need to print something out from, especially like in the case where if somebody at the office wanted to print something, was sending something to the people in the POV to print out there, that would be easier. We just drop it in a Dropbox and then print it from that PC, basically. And yeah, here's my LinkedIn. I'll drop it inside the chat. If any of you want to add me, definitely feel free. But yeah, I think that's it.
And now we're just gonna start answering some questions if
Yeah.
anyone has one. I had one. How do you believe that the actual job hunting process went for you during COVID versus how it probably would have been through a regular application process?
Yeah, that was definitely something because with COVID, it was either really easy to find remote work or you're also competing with everyone else that's looking at this remote work. So I think that kind of made it even more challenging where it's like, and then half the time in the LinkedIn things, they don't even tell you if it's remote or if it's in person. And so it's just like, okay, let's see if I get it. And then, is it in the area? Is it just remote? But yeah.
Cody, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
As far as your toolkit,
Mhm.
when it comes to job hunting and life after college, the next chapter, right?
Mhm.
Did you have like an Excel or a Google spreadsheets to kind of help with your job hunting? Like what
Sounds
was
like
your
a great idea, honestly. I didn't do that. Like I kind of just, like I said, I would mostly just be like LinkedIn. I was looking for especially like network stuff. So I'd be like searching, network positions and just kind of like, okay, I've already applied there because it's not letting me apply again. So, and just kind of I was just kind of shotgunning it out as much as I could. And yeah, there wasn't too much gotten back because I think I especially needed to refine a lot of the information down, if that makes sense, and kind of, get it more tailored to what I was looking for.
Okay, cool. And did you have like a quota per week or like a certain goal that you wanted to reach? Like, I don't know, 10 per week, whatever it was. Or
I don't know, because I'm like, honestly, I'm not very goal driven. Like I wouldn't think about it with the numbers, especially it's like, oh, if I personally, I think that would affect me because I don't want to, I might see myself going and being like, oh, I applied for, 10, 20 positions this week and nothing's gotten back to me. It might be like, I think that might just be more affecting me that way, if that makes sense.
okay.
So I kind of
And
avoided that, but just kind of, like I said, I would just apply whenever I felt like it. You know what I mean?
yeah. Thank you, Cody. And I
Mhm.
think Tim, then Jaden. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, sounds good.
So how much has the skills you learned in college applied to the job that you have now? Or do you find you're having to learn a lot of new things?
It's honestly half and half. Like, especially, I'm very happy when I get to use the skills from schooling, but so much of it is just social skills that you kind of just have to pick up on. We're actually doing a new caseload manager, so like we're transitioning to that, and there's a lot of SQL stuff that the other tech is working on, and a lot of times they'll get stuck and then they'll come to me for like, hey, work this out with me kind of thing. And so I really enjoy that, especially it's, you know, going back to the coding and all of the stuff. It's like, it's been too long almost, you know?
Okay, thank you, Cody. And then Jaden had a question. Go ahead, Jaden.
Yeah, so basically I'm just extending on Tim's question, being that CSUMB doesn't have an IT specialist like route. It's not one of the like concentrations. Closest thing is network and security.
Mhm.
Yeah, basically I just had the same iteration of did you have to learn more IT heavy stuff on your own?
Um, I feel like IT, like that's the thing with IT is like a lot of it is just as you go, the way I see it.
Okay,
You know, you just kind of keep up with like fixing, you know, just kind of fixing the computers. If anything breaks, I open up Event Viewer and try and figure out what the events happened if that pops up. A lot of it's kind of just, you know, troubleshooting. Honestly, Google's your best friend. I'm
okay,
Googling like most of the things that issues at my job. And even being like, if with law enforcement, I'd still find answers. And so it's like, yeah, no.
thanks. Yeah,
Mhm,
because I basically I want to go into IT specialist
mhm,
work, but like I said, CSMB doesn't have like a dedicated concentration to it.
mhm.
So I didn't know how much of network and security would translate over to that field.
Yeah, and one thing I would recommend is like, especially if you're going for that kind of IT kind of stuff, the CompTIA certifications, those ones seem to be the route a lot of people take, where they go like A plus and then the network plus and security plus, kind of however long they want to go on with it. And then depending on where your skills at, you could even just kind of skip the A plus or anything like that. But, but yeah.
Okay,
Mhm,
thank you.
mhm.
And then I had another question, Cody.
Yeah.
Since like for subject like computer science, do you think there was a stiff competition against other colleges like the UC or other CSUs?
Um, I I don't know. I mean, with the, because especially like kind of with the computer science, especially with it, it's like you learn a lot of coding. Like I went into it not expecting to learn much coding or expecting to learn more networking, security and kind of stuff, and ended up with a lot more coding, which it kind of just works out that way. And it's like, then you get the people who are thinking that like you don't need school and everything like that, where it's like, I personally, I'm all for school, you know? And so it's like, it's all just very situational almost, you know, it's who you're kind of talking to, it feels like, you know.
Thank you, Cody. Now, I think Tim had a question. Was this the type of job that you expected to get?
Partly I was hoping to get more like networking kind of job, but this is like, I feel like this is a very good spot for where I'm at now, where it's like getting more experience in the kind of under my belt and just going from there. I may kind of transition to like the network side in a year or two or whenever, but yeah, I guess it kind of, that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Jaden,
you,
did you have
Cody.
a question?
Yeah, just one more. So
Yeah.
bringing up the coding aspect, do you utilize a lot of coding for your job at
It's
all?
it's it's a different kind of situation, like especially the tech that I work, one of the techs I work with, she set up a lot of like, you know, just batch files.
Okay,
Like there's batch files that run whenever anybody logs into their computer kind of thing.
okay,
Or even there's like when we update a program, or there was a program that had a new update, and so we had to uninstall the old one and reinstall the new one. And it's gotten to the point where it's like we use a lot of these, and all I have to do is kind of just edit it, you know, open it up and then see this is what it's doing.
mhm,
And that's kind of what I've taken, especially from the schooling, is that like the the pic or the I like to think that I've gotten good at coding, but I haven't gotten good at a language, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same boat because
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I thought going into it, I wouldn't be learning much coding
Mhm.
stuff. I thought I would be learning more network and stuff like that, just like you.
Mhm.
And I have a friend that works at one of our local courthouses that's a IT specialist.
Mhm.
And he told me that, oh, it seems like everything is going with the coding route now. And he told me personally, he doesn't use coding very
Yeah.
much. It's just, so I just wanted to see if you actually utilized it that much.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's what I mean is like I enjoy it when I do get to use it, but I don't use it too often at the same time.
okay,
But it also is very dependent on like what I'm doing at that point, if that
yeah.
makes sense too.
And I think, thank you, Cody. And I think Emmanuel had a question. How was the interview process? Was there anything specific you felt they were looking for? And do you have any advice on how to prepare for a IT interview?
If I'm gonna be honest, I am terrible at interviews, but it's just kind of like, and because that was one thing was I blank out when I get interview questions. I kind of just like they'll ask me something and I'll just forget, and it's like, oh no, I totally know what, it's like, oh, I'll forget what DNS is, and it's like, okay, no, I do know what it is, but I've just gone blank. But one thing that my supervisor actually mentioned afterwards, after I'd gotten the position and everything, was that he asked me a question, and I think it was like, how do you tell if somebody's what do you do if somebody's angry when they're dealing with this computer issue? And I was kind of like, at first I was kind of like just kind of fumbling around like, well, I mean, you could go body language, but if it's like online, you can't really see the person, so there's that. But it kind of turned into, I shifted it to kind of the answer of like, you want to make sure the person that you're helping is like validated. You want to make sure they're understanding of like, or you understand where they're at, and they're not like, they're not wrong for having a question or something, if that makes sense. And so it's kind of just, especially just go for the be ready for more of the soft skills, be more ready to show yourself as a person than what you are as that you can do tech wise, because like I said, I Google a lot of the issues at work, and that finds the issue. It's just, you need to be good at finding the issue or realizing where it is and kind of how you might be able to take a route.
Okay, thank you, Cody. And then speaking a little bit on that, you mentioned the networking and then the social skills, because I think the commonality is a lot of us have the technical skills, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And we're able to, and if we don't know something, we're able to Google.
Yeah, right.
Right. And I think the differentiator, at least what I'm hearing, is it's the social aspect of it, the social skills and the networking skills. Can you speak more on both? A little bit more on maybe the social skills,
Yeah,
and more on the networking aspect of it. Anything that you found helpful that you're like, oh, I wish I knew, but now I know,
Yeah, no, like because that's the thing is, you're dealing with people, like you're dealing with people more than you are computers, as long as you're not hiding from them or anything. And it's like, especially in my position where it's like a lot of the people are older than me, I'm afraid that they're going to see me as inexperienced or don't know what I'm doing. So it's like, I want to make sure I'm as friendly as possible to them. I don't want to I don't want to cause any, I don't want to rub anyone the wrong way. I don't want to, especially one thing, especially with tech, is that like, you want to avoid being, especially IT, you want to avoid thinking that you know more than the other person, because it's like, it doesn't help, if that makes sense. You don't want to you don't want to rub the person the wrong way, kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah.
And as far as like going through the background process, and I know you said you applied through several jobs, right? How would, since this is a public job, right? It's a county job. How was the
Mhm.
process different between this and say like a commercial job for Apple or Amazon or any of the other companies?
And yeah, like, because I think like I mentioned, it was 5 to 7 references that were like, coworkers, friends, kind of thing, anything like that, where they're especially trying to find out like, are you sketchy? Are you okay to work here? Do you have any past issues that would come up? And I mean, every job has that, but especially in this field, you had to and like this, at least in probation, it's like you kind of have to have that more. They have to check you out more. They have to look into. I think they looked into more of any social media I had, which is like not very much. And because I've heard that they've had stories of people who apply and it's like they're taking pictures holding up a gun to the camera for the officer position. It's like, I don't think they're getting that position, and so it's kind of like, I don't think there was much to be wary of when you apply to any of these things. But at the same time, you have to be aware that if you have a background that might not be cleared, possibly, that this might not be the best route to go with these kind of positions.
Thank you, Cody.
Mhm.
And did experience ever come up for any of these jobs? Like, did a interviewer ever ask you what kind of experience do you have? And because a lot of college students graduating, they don't
Mhm.
necessarily have that experience, and not everyone may have like summer internships or projects outside of class projects.
Mhm.
So did that question ever come up? Like, hey, Cody, what type of experience do you have? Or
Yeah, and that's a good way you can just kind of phrase it with how your experience is. Like, especially going into tech, you can always use the reference. You can always say that you did stuff in video games. If you ran a Discord server or anything like that, you can say that. It shows that you have these outside interests that are good. That can be good descriptions of who you are and what you can do. But yeah, and especially like experience, I got lucky because I had the high school district. Especially, it was like I worked there for, I think I started in 2018, and then yeah, so I started in 2018 and I went to school in 2019, and then I kind of stopped working there. But I worked there over the break, so I was still on the books for an extra year and a half or whatever it was. Because I kind of stopped once COVID happened, because they didn't need the extra work. And so, but it's like at the same time, I could have kept it running and been like, oh, I've been working there for 4 years. And it's like, I don't want to go and say, what did you do? And it's like, oh, well, I only worked there for 2 and everything like that. But it really is just kind of, you have to show, you can highlight specific things you've done, like specific projects or where you've done. And that's how you just build your resume out, is if you have it built on what your accomplishments or like just general of, is it, that I worked at this location, or is it that I worked on in this project, I led this whole team. If kind of options like that, you have options like that. It's just how you fit it to yourself, if that makes sense.
okay, so being flexible and adapting
Mhm.
basically the projects in a way that you can tell a story to the interviewer, right?
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
that answers the question. Um, thank you, Cody. And as far as since you're in that field, do you have like a toolkit that you take with you everywhere you go? Is there a machine, or whatever the toolkit may be?
Mhm.
Are there a common software or a common workflow, or what's your process, sort of, if you can take us through like a
Um,
brief tour, so to speak, of your toolkits? Because in
mhm.
in the IT world and in networking, there's always a toolkit of something, right?
Yeah.
Commonly used software, hardware,
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So like, let's see. One thing is, I did just get a tool, like an actual tool set. There's that, but I don't use that very often because I don't deal much with dismantling stuff so far, at least. I know we have to, there are times when we have to like open up especially with the radios when in the vehicles, we have to open up the inside, like the center console kind of area up front, almost underneath where the normal radio is. There's a whole lockbox and everything. We have to open that up, and then to get access to the port that you plug in the encryption thing too. So there's that, but it's like, and honestly, it's, if I'm ever solving issues, like especially if there's a blue screen on their computer, I open up the event viewer and pull that out, and to see kind of, I'm just trying to figure out where this issue was caused, if it was, just a power thing, or if it was from a program that might specify it. It's all kind of just following the, breadcrumbs almost to get where you're looking to go. And yeah, I mean, Google's your best friend, that's for sure though, too.
Okay, thank you, Cody. And I,
Yeah.
and I know you mentioned working with the radio department
Mhm.
and then other branches of the county. How are those relationships? Like, because I know they're not within your department, but
Mhm.
you're working, the equivalent would be like, if you were at CSUMB, you would be working with IT, but then you'd be working with academic technologies and so forth, so on. So
Yeah.
how are those relationships? How do you cultivate that?
Yeah, so it's very like, it is a lot more separate than I expected. Especially because like working in the high school district, like I had access to Active Directory and I could see all of the users and everything like that, and I had a lot more access. Now it's, I just have access, and I could see like the group policies before, but it's like at this position, I really only see the users. I can only like reset passwords kind of thing. And then the IT has the access to the group policies that specify what the person can access or everything like that. Because there's the general IT, they deal with a lot more of the general stuff. There's the IT, the radio shop. They only specialize in like radios and that. I think they might also be part of the telecommunications department or division, where that one's the networking one. Those are the phones people. And it's I work a lot with them, especially because officers will change positions, and so they'd have to change the phone and everything like that. And so it's basically I have to put in a work order to get that done and work with that. And so it's, especially now that I've kind of done it more, is it helps to get those relationships to be like, hey, so that if there's an issue, I can just message the one person that I know and be like, hey, this is the issue. Is there anything you can like solve with this? And so it's especially as like, like the first impressions with the emails. You want to make sure you start off on a good first impression with that, and then go from there, and then be available to help them if they need it as well, because it's not a one-way street,
Okay, thank you, Cody. And Cody, you spoke of emails. Is there like a certain template or a way that you construct your emails that could be helpful to us
Mhm.
to understand? Because I know everyone has in college, everyone has a
Yeah.
different email style.
Right. Yeah.
We all respond, and some of us are very short. Some of us have like, a whole bunch of stuff after our names. Some of us are like
Yeah.
brief as possible, right?
hmm And on it, I feel like that depends on the location and who you're talking to, especially because, yeah, I've always know you send out like very professional email to your professor and they just send you like K kind of thing. Like there's always going to be those kind of people, and it's like I just kind of try and send out my first email, like even just a first thread of an email. If it's a person I know is going to be a short to respond or anything like that, I will send it out as kind of professionally as I can, just a basis of this is how I send it. I usually kind of at the end of most of my emails, I go like, please let me know if there's any issues or any questions or clarifications I can answer. And like, thanks at the end. I know some people go to the good morning, good afternoon, or like hello for starting. I prefer to say just hello, their name, or things like that. And then just kind of what you want in the email, it gets tricky to kind of find that balance of how do you cut out any fluff, but not, you know, not make it any, not make it too short, or, you know, you want to make sure and that's where that balance comes in of keeping it professional while also putting yourself in the email. And that's kind of just get comfortable with it by doing it more whenever you get the chance. After an interview, you can send out an email. Hey, I really enjoyed talking to you, getting to know you, you know, go from there. But yeah.
Okay. And then as far as any other communication tools that you use, because I know here at the school, and especially, you know, in the College of Science, there's the use of Slack, right?
Mhm.
It's used predominantly, and there's different groups within Slack. Is that one of the communication tools that the county uses or your respective department uses? Or are there other tools? Because I know,
Mhm.
I think earlier you mentioned Microsoft Teams, right?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
one
because
tool.
we use Teams, but it's funny because like whenever I talk to anybody with like on the IT side, if I talk to another division or anything like that, if it's not through email, it'll be through Teams a lot of the time. And then if I talk to anybody in my department, they like don't even open up their Teams. Like they'll try and not sign into it if they don't have to. And so it's like I don't use Teams for any of the officers or anything like that. I'll use it for some of the other techs in my department, but at the same time, they barely look at the team. So it's like you kind of got to fit around the person. If you need a quick response and you know they never check Teams, then it's going to be phone call or email kind of thing, you know?
Okay. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah.
Jaden, did you have a question?
No, I did not.
And Cody, as far as are there any pitfalls to avoid or missteps, no matter how small
Mhm.
it is?
Just in general kind of thing? Or,
Yeah, or in your experience that you've either seen others do it and
Mhm.
or that you've encountered.
That's one thing is especially like like how I kind of mentioned earlier with the um kind of being friendly and being open to these people. It's like you want to make sure that people don't, especially in IT, you don't want to, I never want to make anybody feel dumb for asking a question with their computers or hey, I had this issue. It's like I never want them to, you know, not come to me for an issue, even if it's something as simple as, hey, I don't know how to open this email or whatever. It's kind of like I always try to be as, you know, patient as I can with these people and make sure they feel, you know, that they can come to me. I want to be open to them. If I, you know, shell off as like, oh, I don't like people kind of thing, then it's just going to be harder to do my job, if that makes sense. So it makes it easier for everyone is if you kind of keep patient and help people with whatever you can.
Okay. Thank you, Cody. And if
Mhm.
anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type your question in the chat, and we'll be happy to address your question.
Cody, so for the kind of position that you're in, what kind of like job progression do you see like having for your position?
Like where I'm at currently kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Mhm.
So at least with the IT specialist, there is there's a senior position, which like it's only a few dollars more an hour. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's a lot more responsibility myself. But I could definitely see myself kind of shifting towards a different department in the future kind of thing. Moving to, you know, like the network team or something like that. If a position opens up and I would be a good fit for it. But it all depends and kind of, but at the same time, there's really only 3 techs, including myself, for this department. So it's like, and one of them's about to retire in a couple years. So I feel bad if it's like, if I'm, you know, hanging them out to dry or something like that. But I mean, I like the county kind of stuff that pays well. It's a lot more secure than the public sector, private sector. Private sector is less secure than the public, like the government. And it's just kind of easier to move around if I do find that I would fit somewhere else better. And it's kind of, that's just how I've gone, and it's worked out so far, so.
Yeah, Tim, you had a question? Please go ahead.
Oh, I was clapping.
Oh, I thought it was our hand raised. If anyone else has any other questions, please let us know.
Thank you,
Stop
Cody, so
sharing the
much
screen.
for
Yeah.
insightful, it really helps
Yeah.
kind of bring like an overall picture of what goes on and what's necessary, job
Mhm.
hunting, networking, the social skills. Because I think because oftentimes we college students think, okay, we have the technical skills, we're ready to go, right?
Right,
But
yeah.
then we may need more help on the social aspect of it, or on the
Mhm.
network aspect of it, or understanding that, like you mentioned, not everyone uses one tool, and we have to cater to each person, right?
Mhm.
Like you said earlier, some people don't even open up Teams, right?
Yeah,
And they'll respond via phone call, like more immediate. And so we as college students have to recognize that we got to adapt to whatever the environment is, as well as to each person.
Yeah.
And it's a mutual aid situation as well. Like you help me, I help you kind of situation.
no, definitely, yeah, it's like you need that like fluidity kind of to make things easier on yourself and others.
Yeah. Thank you, Cody.
Mhm.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone that wants to get into IT after college, of what to do throughout college to prepare better
Mhm.
for that position?
I think it's kind of one thing I like to think is that, like, especially with the IT positions, once you finish like at CSUMB, you're gonna have that bachelor's in computer science, hopefully, but in general, the IT positions, they're gonna ask for, from what I remember, I think they would ask for IT, or they would have like computer science or computer engineering, kind of anything in those fields. So it's like you should be good to kind of get to that point of, you should kind of clear those spots where it's those kind of checkpoints almost.
Okay.
But overall, it's kind of just, if you want, I do what interests you, like, if you want to, I especially wanted to go into like cloud services. So I was trying to look into that, just kind of on your off time, start researching things, find out if you, certifications are definitely a good way to give yourself a goal to study for and look into, and it gives you another thing to say, hey, I've earned this, I understand how this certification works and what is needed of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well,
Mhm.
thank you.
Cody, I had another question.
Yeah.
How do you handle mistakes? Like, I know I'm not saying you
Yeah.
do have any mistakes, but it's like
Me,
going into an industry is like, how would you address handling a mistake?
honestly, it's just kind of own up to it. That's the biggest thing. That's honestly one of my biggest pet peeves whenever I'm in a position where it's like, it it doesn't help anyone if you try and, brush it off to someone else or anything like that. But it's like, if you say, hey, that was my bad, like, I learned from it. There was one time I actually had sent an email for,
Oh no, network outage.
Looks like he might have disconnected. We'll wait a quick minute and hopefully he'll be able to reconnect. But I just want to take a moment to say thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for all your questions. If you have any more, please let us know, and we'll see about addressing them once he reconnects.
Well, thank you guys for having this opportunity to speak with someone that's in IT. I appreciate it, especially because that's my interest for a career. So, yeah, thanks, guys.
And thank you for joining us, Jaden.
Yeah, of course. I do have a conflict at 3. That's why I haven't been able to come to the meetings. But I'm trying to get it to where I'm able to join for the
Okay.
network and security meetings. So thought I
Okay.
would let you guys know.
Okay. Thank you, Jaden. We definitely appreciate it. And Marcus, I think you can stop recording right now.